Welcome into the MVFC First and Goal podcast. On this edition, I go behind the mic with the voice of Indiana State, Brian Fritz. Brian, welcome.
Hey, Kelly, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing just fine, thank you.
Good to hear. Well, you went to Indiana University when you were in college. You majored in broadcast journalism. And I'm curious, for you to tell me about your journey then from there to Terre Haute and becoming the voice of the Sycamores.
Sure. I went to Indiana and, made some connections, obviously, within the department there at IU, and had a friend that interned at one of the television stations in Terre Haute. Ended up working in Terre Haute at a TV station, and at that time, that TV station purchased the rights for ISU for both the football, or for both the radio and the television at that point in time. So, I had a connection there that I knew that at least when they decided that they wanted to have sort of their own voice to put, their own stamp on it, I had somebody that was able to get my tape listened to. And like so many people that do this job, it's as much about what break you get and how fortunate you are as much as how good you are. I just happened to know the right person at the right time, and from there, fortunately, my tape was probably towards the top of the list of ones that got listened to, and I think they also offered it to somebody who wanted them to fly him in and out for games, and they weren't willing to do that. So since I was willing to move to Terre Haute, that also worked in my advantage.
Definitely. Well, you also work, besides being the voice of the Sycamores, you also work as a media sales consultant for the Indiana Statesman, which for people that don't know is essentially the student newspaper. What do your job duties entail, and how do you try and mentor, some of the young student media there?
That's a great question, and it's really given me a lot more appreciation for the coaches that I cover. Because I'm working with students that are 18 to 21 years old. I'm helping to teach them, how to be responsible and how to act as a representative in the sales process. And it's interesting, you have to reach them all in different ways, just like coaches do players a lot of times. A lot of them learn in different ways and at different speeds, and it's something that I think has made me a better broadcaster. Because I have more appreciation for guys who, need those college students to be productive for them day in and day out when, in the life of that college student, balancing maybe other part-time jobs, classes, social life, lots of different things. You have to have their focus while you've got them, whether it's a practice or that time that I've got them. So that's something that's challenging, and it's something that I've enjoyed doing, and I think it's given me really additional perspective on what coaches go through.
Yeah. Brian, this has really been the season of the young quarterback in the Missouri Valley, and of course the Sycamores, Isaac Harker, included in that list. And in particular, this past weekend, I counted, 7 of the 10 Valley schools saw an underclassman get the bulk of the snaps. And, with a couple of those schools, it's an injury situation where guys are battling injuries. But for the majority of them, that's not the case. What do you make of the trend and the success so many of those young guys are having?
Well, I think the success is due to the fact that, there's a lot of good coaching in the league, and also the coaches recruit guys that are really talented and able to step in and play. In our specific situation, Isaac's done a great job. His leadership in the huddle has been really important. His decision-making ability at the line of scrimmage has been excellent. He's really checked a lot of the boxes that you would want a quarterback to be able to check. And just being a sophomore, hopefully will do nothing but get better from here. It also helps having targets like Robert Tonyan Jr. And across the league, as I look, Lenore at Western Illinois, the receivers at South Dakota State, there are a lot of great receivers in the league right now. So I think that also might have something to do with some of that success for the young quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Your journey, especially calling football, is an interesting one because there's been some highs, but there's also been a lot of lows at Indiana State. So let's start with the highs. There was a win over North Dakota State in Fargo when they were ranked #1 that comes to mind. A homecoming win over Illinois State, I believe in 2010 for you guys, and then an overtime win over, at Youngstown State. That was kind of the start of getting you guys back in the playoffs. What are some games and calls that really stand out to you?
One of the ones that really stands out to me, Kelly, I'm going to go to a little darker period, was a homecoming win over Western Illinois that snapped, at that time, a very long losing streak for us. But since Trent Miles started the process of restoring our football program to, the level that it's gotten to today, and kind of, bringing it back from, really being on life support there for, some years through a pretty lean decade for the Sycamores. He did a great job, and Mike Sanford has continued that. The win over Youngstown State you mentioned on the road absolutely stands out. The win at North Dakota State when they were #1, again, which was one you mentioned, definitely stands out. And honestly, this year, I don't know that I've ever had a season where we've had as many close games as we've had this year. And it's been a fun one to broadcast because so many of our games have been so close throughout the year.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I heard Illinois State coach Brock Spack say last week he's never seen so much parity in the league as there is this season.
Yeah, there's, the league as a whole is just so good. And I mean, the coaches throughout the conference have just done a great job. And, the margin for error is so small. I almost feel like week to week you can go through, look at who wins the turnover battles, who executes better in the red zone, and that team usually wins.
You touched on it a little bit with that win over Western Illinois. The dark period. There was a stretch, 33 games they went without a win, which spanned over 3 seasons. What was that period like for you? As a guy calling their games, and I would imagine that Western Illinois game was emotional for you. Seeing them win.
Yeah. It was, and that's why that was the first one that really popped into my head, even when there were other games that certainly would be maybe more prominent along that road. That was a challenging period to be a broadcaster, to be really honest. But one of the things that I took away from that is, I would have parents that would tell me, "Hey, we really appreciate listening to the broadcast. We know the team's struggling and not doing well, but you try to be as positive as you can about it, and we really appreciate that." And that was sort of the mindset I always tried to keep, is that the people that are listening to us have a vested interest in Indiana State, whether it's through a family member, whether it's through having been at the university, whether it's having been a part of the Terre Haute community. Those people that are listening to you are rooting for the team you're broadcasting for. So while you have to be fair and you have to be honest, you also want to try to be and put as positive a spin on that as you would as if it were your son or daughter that you were talking about.
It seems like a lot of play-by-play voices in particular, there's not a lot of movement at the college level. Especially the Missouri Valley is the perfect example. Yourself, and there's so many. There's a long list of guys, that have been with the league, 30 plus years. As a guy that's been with Indiana State, since 2000, why do you think that is? Especially, because in the other world of sports media landscape, and newspapers and TV, you tend to be moving from market to market, and there's a lot of turnover.
I think some of it is that a lot of the markets in the Valley maybe aren't what would be considered major markets from a media standpoint. Also, I think there is a certain charm to our league in that it's still a level where a lot of players do stay 4 years. And it's, while certainly everybody is very competitive and you're all trying to win as much as you can, it may not be as much win at all costs as it is a little bit higher up the food chain. I know that's one thing that appeals to me about the Missouri Valley Conference. And I think the people that have gotten into those broadcast positions have gotten really comfortable where they're at, and they're good jobs to have. And, it's a great conference to cover. My family is from around the St. Louis area, love going to the conference tournament each year. St. Louis is a great destination for that, with all the schools being within a pretty drivable distance of St. Louis. It's a conference that I have really enjoyed and really come to appreciate over my time at Indiana State.
Speaking of St. Louis, I almost feel bad asking about this, but you're a diehard St. Louis Cardinals fan, and so how hard has it been, especially this season, watching the Cubs now reach the World Series, and will you be rooting against them now here this week when the World Series starts?
Kelly, I'm actually rooting for them, and I'll tell you why. I've had some great experiences at postseason games in St. Louis, and other than Cardinals fans, I probably have more Cubs fans among my friends than any other team. And for them to have an opportunity to, have some similar experiences to that, I really would like to see them win, all things being equal. Also, my mom's dad was a diehard Cubs fan, and he and I watched a lot of baseball when I was young together. So, there's a part of me, I think there are a lot of people that have some kind of connection like that. Now, if the Cardinals were in it, I wouldn't feel that way, but I wish that the Cardinals would have had a little better season this year, but also they've done a great job and been, as Cardinal fans, pretty spoiled at the level of success really that they've had over the long term. So since St. Louis is out of it and this is the Cubs shot, I'm interested to see, if you talk to Gary Ryman down the road, he'll be really, really excited if they're able to get it done.
Yeah. That's interesting you say that. I mean, a lot of Cubs fans would say that the Cards have had plenty of time and opportunities with enough championships that it's probably their turn to have a shot at it.
Yeah, and if it's the Indians, that's a great story too, because they're kind of in the same boat.
Yes, absolutely. My conversation with Brian continues shortly, but if you like what you're hearing so far on the MVFC First and Goal, check out all the Lineup Media Group podcasts, football, baseball, hockey, and plenty of non-sports podcasts too. Now back to the show. You worked with Royce Waltman in basketball initially, and the Sycamores reached the NCAA tournament back-to-back years, and I believe that was your first 2 years with Indiana State. What was that like, and how has the transition been then to Matt Ren, who was a player on one of those teams?
Well, Matt's really developed into one of my best friends that I have, and he's been great to work with, and it is just, as high character a person and as good a guy as you could ever hope to spend time around. And that's, over the course of my time here, really the thing that, I've come to enjoy most about this is the people that you meet and the people that you get to know and the time that you're able to spend with those people as a result of having jobs like this. Coach Waltman was a great man. I got along very well with Coach Waltman, but he was demanding. He demanded the best from everybody all the time. It didn't matter if you were the starting point guard or if you were a beat writer or if you were a manager for the team. He expected everybody to be at their best at all times. And at times, for a young broadcaster, that could be a little challenging because it forced me to look at some of the things that I was doing and say, boy, he's right. I maybe should have done that a little differently or could have done that a little better. I grew an awful lot as a broadcaster because of Coach Waltman, and I had tremendous respect for him. And Coach Lansing has really followed in his footsteps really well and, has a lot of the same principles in that. But Coach Waltman was a special guy. I really cherished that time with him. He helped me a lot as a young broadcaster. And going to those 2 NCAA tournaments right out of the gate, man, that was fun. I thought, hey, maybe it'll be like this all the time. But I knew it wouldn't be. I also, recognized at the time, what a special group that, Michael Menzer, Matt Ren group was. And to have had the opportunity to work with Matt now for, almost a decade with him now, too, it has been really special.
So with somebody like Matt, where he's coming in to a situation where he's the newbie then, how do you go about, developing him and, developing that chemistry between a play-by-play guy and the analyst?
That's a good question. One of the things, because Matt's so smart and so sharp, I tried to do each year was give him one additional thing to do, whether it was reading some liners, whether it was reading some stats, whether it was doing pregame interviews, postgame interviews, because, a guy that sharp, you want to keep engaged. Also, as I think any good play-by-play person would do, he can adjust to his color person. And when Matt Ren talks about Sycamore basketball, people want to hear what he has to say. Mm-hmm. So it's on me to, give him those opportunities throughout our broadcast for him to be able to do that and, adjust a little bit what I'm doing so that I can work in and make the most of his knowledge, because he's really, really good at seeing a game and very succinctly breaking down exactly what's going on right while it's happening. And it's a gift that he had as a player and certainly translates as a broadcaster as well.
I was shocked to learn that you actually gave KMOX broadcaster and MVC TV voice Tom Ackerman his first broadcasting job at IU. Could you see how talented he was even as a student?
Yeah, definitely I could. You could tell that Tom was somebody that wanted to work hard and wanted to do good. I would maybe take exception with giving, he would have succeeded no matter who was there. I just happened to be a year or two older than Tom at going to the same college at that point in time. His talent and his drive and his work ethic was very noticeable right away. So I don't want to take any credit at all for that, but it's nice that I've been able to maintain a friendship with Tom and see him, periodically, once or twice a year, usually at a ball game. And, we always try to talk for, 5 or 10 minutes or something and kind of catch up where you can. I know he's got a family now. And, as you get older in this profession and you develop families and that, it gets harder. I know, you've traveled on the weekends with, the time on the road. That's one of the challenges of the job. It's something that's both enjoyable when you get to go a lot of the same places, but also, does take away a little bit from home.
Yeah, and for you, especially in the past couple of years, that's really come into play because, you got married a couple of years ago and you gained a 6-year-old stepdaughter, Hannah. How has that experience changed your life for the better?
It's been great to always come home and have somebody that's happy to see you. I think her mom usually is, but Hannah definitely is all the time. It's really a part of my life that I've enjoyed very, very much. And she's just a sweet little girl and, have really been blessed to have had the opportunity to be in her life. And it's something that is really important to me as well, because I feel really strongly about what a great job and experience I had as a child because of how my parents were as parents and raising me. And, to be able to do that for somebody else is something that was really important for me.
You started also calling baseball for the Sycamores in 2009 and have been fortunate because you've called games for a first and second round draft pick. How would you sum up, those years in particular?
Well, I remember Sean Mania and Ty Block in the opening round of the Missouri Valley Conference tournament here not too long ago, and I've been very fortunate. The Sycamore baseball program has been really good. Both Rick Heller and Mitch Hannes are great baseball men. Really enjoy my time with both, especially being around the ballpark with some downtime in baseball, talking before some games, after games, strategy. And as a baseball guy kind of at heart, I've really enjoyed those relationships and get a chance to talk shop with them throughout the years. So, a lot of great players have come through the Missouri Valley Conference. It's been a very, very good baseball league, and that's a part of my job that I've really enjoyed. As you mentioned, I started in 2009 with that because it was added to our network. It was something that I'd always wanted to do that, frankly, I didn't know if I'd ever get the chance to. So I'm glad that I did.
Yeah. football wise, you've seen some of the top football guys come through Indiana State, guys like a Mike Parrish, a Shakir Bell. And now in particular, there's 4 assistants that are former players. What has that been like? Because you probably knew a lot of them as players and then now seeing them on staff.
Yeah, and another part of that, a guy like Jaden Everett, I've watched him start a family, and his wife was Hannah's kindergarten teacher last year.
Oh, really?
So just
wow.
a lot of neat connections. Yeah, it's a small world, but it's really been enjoyable to watch those guys grow up and develop and become men and good leaders. Shannon Jackson is another one that as a student started here and was kind of a shy, quiet kid, and he's really developed into a leader, and, he and his wife have a beautiful family as well, too. So, that's what's meaningful to me is seeing guys that, have had success not only here as players, but also then gone on and really been successful in life.
Yeah. Would you say, you develop so many relationships. It's kind of like, it's almost like being a coach in the sense that because of how much you're around some of the guys, you develop long-standing relationships beyond just their college years. Do you tend to keep in touch with a lot of guys?
I do the best I can with that. A lot of it has to do with how often the guys are around Terre Haute and their proximity to the city, quite honestly. Would love to. Also would say that I do a much better job of that with basketball players than football players just because of the numbers. Mm-hmm. It's 12 or 13 guys versus, 53 to 65 guys. I try to do that as much as I can. Like anything else, everybody gets busy with lives and lots of different things. And I will tell you that there are places that we go to where maybe a former player comes to see us play on the road once a year. Jordan Prenny, who played for us, who's from Marion, Iowa, usually comes when we play North. I really look forward to that one time a year where you maybe see that former player at a game because it's close to where they've settled down.
Yeah. Before we finish up, I do want to talk about some of the mishaps that have happened along the way. And some of the ones I heard about were an instant replay incident with as far as like an Ethernet cord that was taken away from you guys. And then an airport situation at Wichita where the plane flew into the wrong airport. So can you share a couple anecdotes or two that are funny and fun to look back on?
Yeah, that happened with Coach Waltman, that we went to Wichita and actually flew into the wrong airport, and thankfully the pilot realized it, went and took us to other airport. There are all kinds of things that have happened through the years. I probably should have anticipated that question and really had a better antidote for you. Because over time there's so many of them that you do have, or you do come across it. Being on the road with a team is a lot of fun, and there are a lot of great stories. And that's the thing I think that everybody remembers when you do see people down the road and run into people. You don't so much remember who won or lost or what all the scores of the games have been, but you remember those relationships and those stories.
Finally, I had heard you're a big fan, especially, since you mentioned you have family in St. Louis, you're a big fan of the Hill, and there's so many great restaurants, not only, in the Hill area, but across St. Louis. Given that we're going into basketball season now, and that in the spring we'll obviously have the MVC Arch Madness basketball tournament, what are some restaurant recommendations that you would have for some fans out there?
Well, it depends a little bit on what you like and where you're going. You certainly touched on it. The Hill is one of my favorite places in St. Louis, without any doubt. Different places around the league, you have different places that you like to go. Ebbets Field is very close to the hotel where we stay at in Springfield. That's the other thing, is a lot of it depends on proximity to where the team's staying on the road, in terms of what some of those restaurants are. But that's one thing with being in the league for a long time. You do get a feel for some spots, and hey, this is pretty good. We ought to go back there. And Ebbetsfield and Springfield is one that pops to mind right away. Matt and I, there was a place in Omaha that we really liked a lot back when Creighton was in the league, and so that's again part of the travel. That's the fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brian, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you would like to share that we haven't chatted about?
Just that I've really enjoyed seeing these pieces that you've done, because as well as you get to know a lot of the guys across the conference, it's been interesting to hear each of them sort of tell their stories. So, from the perspective of, being friends with a lot of those people, I've really enjoyed getting to know them a little bit better.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot. And I think you will be able to hear. I'm due to have Gary Rima on here in the next couple of weeks, so you may get your wish about hearing about his joy, or the opposite with the Cubs, depending on what happens over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, either way, they've had a great year.
Yeah, they sure have. Like what you heard from Brian, Fritz, and our MVFC First and Goal podcast, check out the many other podcast offerings from Lineup Media Group, including Baseball Outside the Box, which this week takes a closer look at the World Series matchup. Head to lineupmedia.fm for more info or to subscribe.